offer is truly an honor. I am humbled. I am privileged. And I'm overjoyed to serve you and be in your presence. It is truly my honor. As someone whose life has had a very specific and deep spiritual theme throughout the course of my life, I have never truly found myself naturally drawn into any political arena. But as one who is here living, like many of you, for the salvation of humanity, as a spiritual first responder, as I like to call it, the spiritual journey is about bringing the light of consciousness into whatever area of life has captured the time, attention, and imagination of the collective. And even though it seems like most of the world, or at least this country, has been captivated by an election in a variety of ways, the complexity is that not all of us are having the same experience, and that's okay. But I want tonight to share with you the deeper underpinnings of what's really going on and how it pertains to the evolution of consciousness. And in this, I'm not minimizing the impact of an election. I'm not minimizing any threat or fear that anyone might have as a result of an election. Nor am I, and hopefully you, am not satisfied with just relating to life based on just the things we see in front of us. Everything we see are symbols, and they are symbols of our highest evolution, and we are all evolving at different rates of speed. I am not a Trump supporter or opposer. I am not a Hillary supporter or opposer. I am not anti-anything. I am pro-equality. I am a supporter of unity. Like you, I am an agent of consciousness. And in every breath, I vote for love. And it's the very love that I bring to you through this transmission that will narrate what this moment in time is an opportunity to realize. If you're scared, that's okay. If you're afraid, that's okay. If you're disappointed, if you're angered, if you're agitated, if you just don't know what to think or feel, that's okay. If you're secretly excited and you're afraid to let it out, that's okay. Because all of this represents something very large in the evolution of consciousness on a collective level. But before we can look at what this represents, We have to look at spiritual evolution as a whole so we can realize at this time in history, and what will probably be the title of this YouTube video, the end of the old paradigm. When a book prophesizes the end of days, not sure you've read the book, maybe the Cliff Notes. End of days is only end of days for the old paradigm. Let's be clear. Armageddon is Armageddon for the old paradigm. The end of the world is the end of the old world. But you, and you, YouTube, are light bearers of a new world, are leaders and way showers of a new humanity. It is not the end of your world, it is the end of the broken world. And you are simply here anchoring a light because it is we who rise from the ashes to create something magnificent out of what can no longer remain. This is not your end of days. This is not your Armageddon. This won't be your judgment day. It is simply the unraveling of the old paradigm. And the transmission I'm going to offer you tonight was one I received a week ago. And then I came to this venue and I saw what you can see behind me, and I saw the word gratitude, which perfectly will play an interesting role in what I transmit to you tonight. Funny how that works. I download something, gratitude's a key part of it, and I show up tonight. And there it is. Amazing. A spiritual journey on a collective level is a shift in consciousness from the old way of being into the new way of being. It is a journey of alchemy where the consciousness of a being wakes up out of the dark ages and enters the infinite realms of illumination. And when one is going from one old paradigm to the new, or out of the dark and into the light, the manifestations in a world like this that act as the catalysts to help each individual out of the dark and into the light are known as adversity, stress, and conflict. Because whether you're thinking of it as internally, as the left and right hemispheres of the brain clashing and colliding together in opposition, or it's the whatever opposite you can think of, the masculine and the feminine clashing in opposition, the people and the government clashing in opposition. Any description of opposites clashing in opposition is simply the two opposites of polarity that clash together, breaking apart the old, the outdated in either side to clear the space for the new to emerge. So when you're living in a world like this, whatever manifestation of anger, judgment, injustice, violence that you see are all manifestations that give the world at large the opportunity to play out the energies that clear the space for a new world to dawn. And instead of trying to be in the space of, I am going to be in the light and turn away from what I'm afraid of, and I'm just going to judge the world and wonder when everyone's going to get their crap together, What we're going to do is turn towards this colliding, and we're going to hold space and see that sometimes things need to clash and clash and clash to wear out the fight so that surrender can dawn. Those who fight exhaust themselves, and we hold space for something deeper to emerge once their exhaustion overwhelms them. We're not in this fight, but we're the ones who already won the war. And typically, people explain it from out of the dark into the light. And the most ironic part about that description is that beings who are embodying or acting out darkness seem to be the most offended when their darkness gets pointed out. Have you ever noticed that? Someone's not being nice, persecuting another, shaming someone, hurting someone. Hey, it looks like you're embodying some darkness over there. Oh my God, I feel really judged by that. It's amazing how quickly darkness feels judged when it's reflected its own behavior. So instead of thinking about it as dark versus light, because if you think of it as old paradigm versus new, or dark versus light, it brings up all these funny spiritual judgments where everyone's like, okay, I want to be on the light. It's one thing to be the light. It's another thing to want to be on the light side is because we don't want to be with the dark. So I want to give different words so you can understand what this shift in consciousness is really about. It's not a shift in consciousness that's begun with this election. This election is just a manifestation taking us through a journey way before this election. That's why I'm not just going to talk about this election. It's not irrelevant, but it's not the point. So instead of thinking of it as dark against light or from dark into light, let's think of it in different terms. How does darkness typically operate? What's the operating mode of darkness? In order for darkness to generate inside of a being, there has to be a verb. The generating force of darkness is judgment. And one who judges is often the victim of judgment from someone else. The darkness in one persecuted, shamed, abused the innocence of another, and that innocence gets suppressed and shut down, and then this darkness of judgment is like a torch being passed to someone else who then passes the darkness of judgment on, whether socially, personally, verbally, or physically, or otherwise. That's why darkness is a cycle that is broken. And it's broken by the light that awakens in all. So let's not call it darkness. Let's just think of it as judgment. And instead of thinking it as light, because the irony of the spiritual journey is that there are beings who are not willing to do what it takes to embody the light, but they align with the light because they're just so damn afraid of the dark. So instead of thinking of it as light, let's give a name to the light. And what is the verb? What is the governing energy of light? What is the one thing that when you're in the light is just the most naturally occurring verb? We would say love, and of course, being the I love you guy, right? You'd think that. I'm going to give you a different word. A word that came to me a week ago. The governing force of light is gratitude. Exhibit A. And it is the accelerated energy of divinity that motivates one out of the darkness of judgment and into the light of gratitude. And that acceleration out of judgment and into gratitude is called love. Love is the transformer and redeemer. Darkness is divinity in its most inactive state. Darkness is divinity in its most dormant state. So it is divine, it's just dormant divinity, unactivated consciousness. Gratitude is actualized divinity in form. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Because if I say from judgment to gratitude, people who are immersed in judgment get real sarcastic and go, what, you just want me to be grateful all the time? Oh, forget the world I live in and like who just got voted into office and I should just be grateful all the time? I'm not saying that at all. That goes for you, YouTube. I'm not saying that. And I know you know that, I'm just saying that.
Well, Matt, that sounds like you're making fun of people and making fun of things. That's not very enlightened.
I know. I know. I love you. So here's the thing. The old journey, when I set it up like this, judgment, from judgment to gratitude, you would think that means I have to learn how to be grateful all the time to outrun or outravel the judgment. And correct me, I'm not going to say correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not under this assumption, but let's just consider the fact. Doesn't it seem totally overwhelming and totally daunting to be someone who experiences any degree of judgment, and when someone tells you, well, in order for you to be out of the cycle of judgment, you're just going to have to be grateful all the time, doesn't that just feel like the most impossible thing in the world? Of course. Because that is not actually the point. So I want to explain to you the point of this spiritual journey. It's not the one who's in judgment is trying to inauthentically be grateful until the spooky, kooky, judgmental energy gets purged away. Why is that not the way? Because to try to be grateful to chase the judgments out of town is maintaining a judgment against judgment. Oh. And ain't that the most ironic thing? People go, how come the gratitude doesn't work? Because you're trying to get rid of judgment with a bigger judgment. So let's talk about this differently. The starting point where dormant consciousness goes on a journey of ever-expanding illumination, where the greater its vibration expands, the higher its morality and most divine qualities and characteristics dawn. When that dormant divinity of darkness or judgment starts its journey, it will inevitably end up in the fully activated light of gratitude. But what's the bridge between that? The bridge between that is a multi-level journey. You might say a bridge from the dark into the light. I look at it as more of a cycle. For all intents and purposes, you may want to call it the grief cycle. That the minute dormant divinity begins its spiritual journey, it begins going through the stages or cycle of grief to grieve the loss of the darkness and the old as it steps into the light of the new. And anything that evolving divinity experiences in its journeys throughout each stage of grief in no particular order, whether stages come back and repeat and we flip-flop back and forth. Every single thing you face in the world, from the way your family dynamic was created to the type of candidates who debate each other on your television set, who load comedians up with the greatest material known to mankind. giving Alec Baldwin a chance to be an absolute genius. While robbing me of at least 4 to 8 years before I get to see Apprentice again. No matter what manifests in your world, it is only for the purpose of helping you face what needs to be faced, to resolve what needs to be resolved, to take you through the many layers of the grief cycle as you, the activating divinity, purge attachments to the old and step into the light of the new, where judgment gets liberated, reformed, and transformed into gratitude. Gratitude is a sign of an already reformed being of divinity, not something judgment needs to practice and work on. When you've been fully reformed, gratitude is your natural state. When you're in the midst of your journey, judgment is a sign that healing is underway. The point isn't to be less judgmental. The point isn't to be more grateful. The point is to know that one is the beginning of the journey, one's the end of the journey, and the middle is a grief cycle that I will describe, and life will do anything it needs to do individually and collectively. It will manifest whatever kind of a circus of a world you need to live in just to help you complete this journey as fast as possible. So let's talk about this. In no particular order, what are the stages of grief? And I'm just going to give it to you the way it comes to me. I'm not going by any kind of a learned background. I'm just going to tell you based on my lived experience. The first stage of grief is denial. And in denial, there tends to be a sense of isolation. Now, one would think isolation means I'm away from people. But that's not really the case in a modern day technology-driven society. Because and again, what I'm saying is commentary, just to notice. No judgment, of course. Because nothing is inherently wrong, it's just something to help you wake up. But I point things out to help you wake up. You ever gone out in public recently? Like, you ever gone to a restaurant and looked around and notice that instead of people talking to one another, they're down on their phones? You ever seen that? If you haven't, you're probably on your phone. Matt, is there an app that I can download that I can notice other people on their phone? No. You gotta look up. Look up. By the way, your phone screen is this big. Life is like the IMAX screen. So if you want to watch the most amazing movie, look up.
Because it's getting good.
That's right. It doesn't even eat into your data package. Just look around. So you look around, and in a technology-driven society, and again, I'm not someone who's against anything, because through YouTube or Facebook, we use technology consciously to bring out the consciousness and teachings. There's nothing wrong with anything, but it's all about mindfulness and balance. And when we have a world that has been conditioned to look down at their screens, do you know what that means? That means we are all sharing space together, but we're all living in our own isolated virtual worlds. It's one thing to be isolated in denial in your own home and pushing away the world around you, which when you go through a certain stage of spiritual incubation and awakening, that's necessary because you're so sensitive. And I get that. But how interesting is it to live in a world where we're all amongst one another, but we're all isolating from the world by being in the world inside of our technology devices? to be social and isolated at the same time. That's hard to pull off. And so one of the ways we wake up out of this primary stage in the grief cycle of isolation and denial, because they kind of go together. Isolation means I no longer give so much of my time to the things that distract me from the deeper spiritual journey that my life represents. And denial says, I no longer deny the fact that every single outcome and reason for why things happen in my life is only for the purpose of my highest spiritual evolution. Now that will shoot a cannonball right through the most widely understandings of law of attraction. And thank God. Because I do not want any of you to sit around and think that anything is happening in your life because of what you do or haven't taken the time to desire. Because that's, at this point of life, complete nonsense. You are not the reason why things don't seem to work, and you're not the reason why things work out. It's all about the fate of your journey. And everything becomes exactly what it needs to be to take you through the various stages of grief so that the dormant divinity becomes awakened consciousness to shine a light to wake up all the other dormant divinity so this world can remember the heaven it's always been. So in the primary stage of denial and isolation, our consciousness awakens and we say, what are the things I do a lot of each day that's really kind of a distraction from a deeper, more meaningful life? What are the things I do all the time that are really not healthy? And I'm not saying don't use technology. I'm saying maybe don't live your life out through technology. Maybe have times in your day where you put the phone down. Maybe there are times where instead of wondering what other people think, you stop and ask yourself, how do I feel? And even if you're going through the incubation stage, right? You're exhausted, you have chronic fatigue-like symptoms, whether it's, Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, and all these types of debilitating things, which I totally understand, and you literally don't even have the energy to leave the house, that becomes the perfect recipe or the perfect opportunity for technology to further isolate your consciousness. So even if you have to be in your house and you don't even have the energy to get outside, take a walk, or even maintain a normal standard of living, this is where we say, even in my greatest day of debilitation, no matter the circumstances I am facing, I complete the stage of isolation by not distracting myself with things that are not a part of my highest evolution. Enjoy Netflix. Don't zone out on Netflix. Enjoy YouTube. Just don't live there. Enjoy Facebook, enjoy Twitter, Instagram. In doses.
Except for yesterday when it told me I was dead.
Yeah, there was a glitch in Facebook and told Julie she was dead.
Memorialized me, and then it apologized today and said, "Whoops, sorry, we fixed our error." Did any of you end up dead as well, or is it just me?
Just shows you how unreliable the virtual world really is. Not such a smartphone after all, huh? Not such a smartphone after all. So no matter how functional or unfunctional you are physically or energetically or emotionally, When you complete the initial stages in the grief cycle, you become aware of, here's where I give all my time to. Because you know what the most fascinating thing about isolation and denial is? We can all live our lives like we have a lot of things going on. And just because we have a lot of things we give our time to doesn't mean we're actually making the most of our time. So as a way of waking up out of isolation and denial, what are the things that we give our time to that are really not in our best interest? And again, I'm just saying this to inspire consciousness. I've met people who are online in spiritual chat rooms all day, and because they're discussing big spiritual matters, doesn't mean they're not using it to isolate from life. Let me make a bold statement. We don't anchor the light of consciousness virtually. We anchor the light of consciousness viscerally. And you cannot be online to viscerally anchor the light. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be online. It just means in doses. So when we wake up out of the primary stage of isolation and denial, we wake up out of the self-defeating habits and patterns and behaviors that draw our attention away from the deepest purpose of our being, which is awakening out of judgment and into gratitude. And we wake up out of the spell of denial and no longer deny the fact that every single moment of your life, whether it's the meeting of your soulmate to the unexpected loss of a role you're playing, or something you thought was going to work out fantastically that blows up in your face. When you wake up out of denial, you are no longer denying the fact that every single thing could only be happening to move me through one stage of consciousness. So as you wake up out of isolation and denial, what's the next stage you often face? Confusion. Confusion says, I don't know why this is happening. And because consciousness, in its dormant infancy, doesn't know why something's happening and doesn't feel very secure in not knowing why something happens, it tries to deny the stage of confusion. And it moves quickly out of confusion and into a defense mechanism, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, called anger. In the beginning, you didn't know anger, but you were introduced to anger by someone who is angry, and you put it or took it out on you. You learned about anger by being on the receiving end of anger. And do you know what that anger that you are on the receiving end did for you? It made you confused. And because confusion is one of the most vulnerable and unpredictable stages in the grief cycle, your confusion brought you into the very anger that someone else took out on you. Anger is where whatever in you was shut down and hurt and betrayed and denied and abused by someone else's unconscious conditioning. Anger is when you start to wake back up and reclaim the power of your voice. And anger is letting out, often vocalizing or viscerally playing out all the pain that hasn't been processed. And anger is often a defense mechanism that is acting as the guardian and protector of the vulnerable, wounded one, known as sadness. We are angry because we're afraid to be sad. And if we were sad, we would have to be confused, and no one wants to go there. No one says, I'll just be confused about all of this. And why do you suppose you live in a crazy, wacky world where everyone, whether they have facts and usually no background for their hypothesis, why do you suppose you live in a world where everyone thinks they know everything, whether they know anything or not? Because we'd all rather pretend we know what the hell's going on than just be confused. We're all afraid to be confused because we're intimidated by sadness, so we hide in anger and righteousness, colliding with other people's anger and righteousness, and we collide and collide and collide until all of our defense mechanisms blow apart, and then we can all just rest in the sad uncertainty of confusion where we make our way through the grief cycle. And you look at an election like we have had, and life says, how do we get a technology-driven society that lives in a socially functional form of isolation and denial into really an accelerated journey of evolution? Let's confuse the hell out of them. Let's confuse the hell out of them. Well, how are we going to confuse a lot of people at the same time to inspire more consciousness? Let's have an election. Let's have an election where on both sides, it's kind of suspect. And let's have the results kind of be a collective WTF moment. And if you look at the world went out of socialized denial and isolation, right? Think of it. World, Instagram, oh my God. How many people like me on Facebook? Oh my God. Cats on a treadmill. Right? And all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is your new president. What? And life goes, hey, we got them out of denial and isolation. Now they're in confusion. That was a huge leap. Progress. And if you're sitting there going, why did Donald Trump have to be elected? Because you are on your phone all the time. Get off your damn phones. Look what life had to do. Look what life had to do. The dude from The Apprentice. Are you kidding me? Look what life had to do to get us off our phones. This wouldn't have happened if we still had fax machines and shit like that. Right? Back in the dark ages when if you had a computer, you had to carry around a 50-pound computer. That was awesome.
You wanted to go to a restaurant, you had to call them and ask them for directions.
Actually talk to a person and go, hey, reservation? Remember when Siri was 411? Remember that? That was awesome. Actually, I had to wait and talk to another human being. That was great. I digress. So the world goes from isolation, denial, into confusion. Now, the ego is the consciousness that goes from the dormant divinity to activated, but it's that growth, the growing evolution of the soul. Ego doesn't like confusion. Because in confusion, there's no reference points. What you thought was up and down gets mixed around. You don't know what to do or where to go. And you feel vulnerable and helpless. And if you're willing to take the journey in the highest level of consciousness, confusion will just make you sad. Because then you're just purging part of the grief of the old paradigm and welcoming the new. It's a point of surrender. But most people aren't willing to go from confusion to sadness. They got to go confusion, then anger, back to sadness. And we have an election, confusion erupted, and as a defensive response to the confusion that even if you tell people, by the way, all of your confusion is a great initiation into higher consciousness. Do you think most people give a crap about that? I'm talking to you because you are the beings on this planet who are anchoring light for the rest of the world. And when you are a being who is so inundated in the realm of judgment, you are going through the healing journey and most likely don't give a crap about it. Only caring about the healing journey if it's going to give you more of what you want and make all of your inconveniences disappear. And haven't you noticed that that's not really how this goes? And so we have a lot of people who have experienced anger in response to collective confusion, whether it's anger towards the result, anger towards people who are angry about their favorite candidate, anger towards people they know who voted for the person they don't want in the office, people unfriending people because of how they voted. Right? People in the streets protesting, we will not stand for this now, like I said. Remember, anger and sadness is when the repressed, the hurt, and the victimized are reclaiming their power from injustices, from persecution, from abuse, from abandonment. They're reclaiming their power, but often demonstrating their power in very unconscious and unfocused ways. Which is why it's important to understand how all of this is a manifestation of evolving consciousness. So you know that the thing that has caused your anger is not actually what you're angry with. You're not angry with anything at all. You're just angry because anger is being purged out of the cells of your body to move you out of grief, out of guilt, out of shame, and out of sorrow, and into the trajectory of gratitude. Don't try to be grateful if you don't feel it. Just let this run its course. And as you allow the anger within you to be expressed, hopefully not on other people, you give yourself the most honorable opportunity to be with the depths of what the old paradigm is here to unravel. Where consciousness wakes up within a field of darkness, and whenever consciousness starts to illuminate inside of a field of darkness, that darkness becoming conscious of its own behaviors, thoughts, and patterns starts to feel vulnerable, helpless, and ashamed of itself. Whenever the ego is exposed by consciousness, it always feels judged, persecuted, and ashamed. And it's a very raw and deep and delicate journey. You ever had the insane experience of someone judging you and you point it out to them and they feel like you're judging them? It's because when darkness becomes aware of itself, it feels persecuted and attacked. And of course, what's the only thing that feels attacked but the energy of an attacker? So in sadness, darkness becomes aware of itself. And if we identify in that too deeply, instead of finding the humility to really be empathetic to our own innocence, we develop a sense of self-judgment, inferiority, or self-hatred. Self-judgment, inferiority, and self-hatred is when consciousness is becoming aware of itself but still within a field of darkness. That's why I say darkness is judgment, because when judgment starts to become illuminated by consciousness, it goes from judgment to others to self-judgment, judgment turned on oneself. Does that make sense? So out of denial, isolation, whether we go to confusion and it leads to sadness or anger before sadness. It can even branch off into little fun asides. Called bargaining. Bargaining is a stage of negotiation. Negotiation where you start to existentially negotiate with life prior to realizing that life is not going to negotiate with you simply because to negotiate with life would be to take you through this journey at a far slower pace. To negotiate with life would be to move you through the grief cycle slower, which is the definition of hell. Heaven is the quickest route through the grief cycle and into the light. Hell is when you negotiate with life and beg life to slow this down. So the difference between heaven and hell is going through the same journey, but hell is just taking the journey at the slowest speed, and heaven is when we take it in the most direct way. And it's not like the universe isn't hearing your pleas and honoring your desires, but if all of us were to get our way in all the way we want to get it, we would literally be slowing down the pace and going through this cycle of transformation far slower, and life is far too compassionate for you to do that. So when we wake up out of the bargaining stage of grief, that's when we realize life is not negotiating at all, because you are already living out the highest possibility of your journey, and you are being taken through a journey that is the dance between time and intensity, that if you make it through in the most direct way, it's going to be really intense. And if you make it through in a less intense way, it's going to take a hell of a lot of time. And life is moving you out of hell as fast as possible. All you have to do is hold on and breathe. No negotiating. And then you can even go back and repeat different stages, then go, oh, but if I only would have been different, or if only I could be different, my life would be different. That's bargaining and denial at the same time. That's a 2-for-1. That's a combo platter. So when we stop isolating through the misuse of technology, when we fight with life because we're denying that life is always helping us evolve out of this grief cycle, out of the darkness of judgment into the light of gratitude, when we're willing to be confused and we're willing to be sad instead of angry, and when there's no negotiation in a universe, because negotiation is only in a realm if you're not living out the highest possibility already. And it's not like there isn't something to manifestation, but here's the question you have to ask yourself before you get hot on that kind of a teaching. Before you try to manifest something, which is fine if you want to manifest something, even though what's going to come to you is going to come to you whether you think you're manifesting it or not. Before you try to manifest something you want, what makes you think this isn't already the highest possibility? And if there's any part in you that says, well, it would be the highest possibility if something were to be different, that's the part of you that's being unraveled by this journey. Isn't it always the funny battle cry of the ego that says, it would be better if something that wasn't happening were to happen? Isn't that always the standpoint? It's either something that isn't happening should be, and something that is shouldn't be. But here's the reality. It's happening or not happening because it's the best thing for you to get through this stage, these cycles. And when we wake up out of denial, no longer willing to live under the spell of isolation, willing to welcome confusion as a way of awakening out of the terms and conditions of how we've been taught to perceive reality. When we're willing to be sad instead of angry and no longer here to negotiate with life in order to consider what are the most powerful choices I can make in every moment to serve my highest evolution and the awakening of consciousness. That's when we first step into the light of gratitude. And the first thing we experience when we return home out of the darkness of judgment into the light of gratitude is acceptance. Now, the illusion in the old spiritual journey is, if I could just accept, I would make my way throughout these stages of grief and I'd get to the gratitude faster than ever. Isn't that the old paradigm? Is where's the shortcut? Or the bargaining and denial of, I'm only feeling this crap because I haven't accepted enough. We turn it on ourselves. You know what the reality is? You will learn to accept and be grateful naturally by bringing honor and humility to these stages of grief. And it's the time you spend moving through these different stages and cycles that actually builds up the momentum to allow acceptance and gratitude to arise naturally instead of something your ego is trying to manufacture. How many times have you heard this in a spiritual journey? I tried to accept, I tried to be grateful, as if it was a manipulative tool that we thought, ooh, I'm going to sweet talk God and do this real noble thing, and God will say, let's just take you out of this stage and put you over here. As if there isn't a specific reason why you're exactly where you're at. People can be as crafty to hack into computers and be as sophisticated as they will be, but no one bullshits the universe. And individually, there are a lot of people in this world right now. You here tonight as light bearers of a new consciousness, you there on YouTube. What an honor it is to be with you. Who have made your way through a lot of these stages that I've described, who are anchoring the light of acceptance and gratitude, not because it's something someone like me told you should do, but because it's just bubbling up inside of you, because you've completed those stages to where now the light of acceptance and gratitude, love, peace, and unity is just your natural state of being coming through because of what's been unraveled. But I'm saying all of this because a lot of us are anchors of the light, and we're also witnessing a world that is very much in the throes of these stages of grief that I've illuminated. Can you see that? Now, the good news is that you don't have to wait for the entire world to make its way through the grief cycle and into the light before you can shine. But I'm saying all of this so that you understand how this is all playing out. We are the first ones arriving on this planet to anchor the light that proves and brings to life the reality of what we all become when we make it through our journey. And we are anchoring the light so that those in various stages of darkness can see that light and find their way home. None of us can be spared of our journey, but the more we honor every precious stage as an initiation into consciousness, the more we make our way through our journey and into that light of gratitude that is already within us, just building up momentum to wake up. This is not about if you just accepted and had more gratitude, you'd feel better about yourself. Oh, you don't feel good, you're angry, you must not be accepting. How judgmental is that? Then you're angry in response to life, which is what life is trying to bring out of you, and then you turn it on yourself and you judge yourself as a result. Another 2-for-1. And even when you see this in chat rooms or on the YouTube comments, because a lot of us live virtually, so I talk about it virtually because that's where we spend a lot of time. What you see is the anger, sadness, and confusion of the uninitiated souls, lashing out at the gratitude that's anchoring the light. Remember, the clashing, the conflict, the adversity is what clears the space to move us through these stages. And oftentimes, the gratitude that anchors the light become the perfect pawns and victims for those that are still angry, for those that would rather be angry than confused. And it's so amazing because you could even be like in a spiritual chat room where everyone's talking real spiritual stuff, and it's still judgment against gratitude. I do a video on gratitude, beautiful comments, and some judgments. Because judgment is the governing force of darkness. Darkness is meant to return to the light, but darkness wants to hold on to its identity as if it's fighting for its survival. And do you want to know why darkness is fighting for its survival? Because it's fighting for its survival. Darkness is not going to make this journey. Darkness will not be as light continues to dawn. The light is welcoming darkness home, but darkness perceives light as a threat because darkness only sees through the eyes of judgment, which means it only sees through the eyes of opposition. Darkness says, if you're not here to enhance my darkness, you're an enemy that I fight. So whether it's you engaging on an online conversation, whether it's you in your spiritual community or whatever it is, or with your family, the archetypal infrastructure in today's evolving times is the clearing of the unconsciousness as judgment fights against the light of gratitude, only to exhaust its defenses as it prepares to surrender and come home to the light. When gratitude meets gratitude, a moment of unity occurs. When anger denies its own evolution by lashing out at gratitude, victimhood unfolds. When the light being attacked by the darkness of judgment knows that darkness is only attacking to deny its own evolution, liberation has been found. And when anger fights against anger, conflict arises. And what this means is that we don't need internal turmoil or interpersonal conflict when we're willing to say, I get that every moment of my life is a spiritual initiation, and no matter what I think about spirituality, whether I judge it because of the religion I was born into and indoctrinated in my younger years or whatever the bias is, if I can just surrender to whatever way I define a higher power, that every moment of my life is coming to be because a higher power is guiding me through a journey to go from who I was to my best possible expression. And the in-between doesn't have to be comfortable or convenient or to my liking, but it is happening for a very big reason, even if I don't happen to know what that reason is. And when we can say, I surrender and will participate and go with this, and whatever is taken from me could only be a distraction, and everything's happening for my highest evolution, whether it feels good or not, then you have decided to move into the most direct means of evolution, where you are saying to life, I don't need conflict, adversity, and turmoil in order to wake up. And when you make that decision, not only do you start to awaken everyone else around you and fast track them on their evolution, but you start to become a being who can evolve and grow in this world without having to be attacked and victimized by other people's unprocessed pain. None of this is happening because you weren't good enough. None of this is happening because of what you didn't do. None of this is happening because you didn't spend all day desiring and desiring and desiring for endless amounts of time. None of this is happening because you didn't tell the universe what you wanted. None of this is happening because of anything you did in past lifetimes. Karma is not the stupid things you did in past lifetimes, and now you're paying back your cosmic bar tab. Karma is all the unresolved experiences that you need to have to take you through every stage of grief to successfully anchor you into the light of gratitude for you to shine a light in the world that helps wake everyone else up. And in the old spiritual paradigm, we all want to know the magic 5-step process that gets us through this as fast as possible. And you want to know it's not even a 5-step process. It's a 1-step process. It's called humility. This is happening for a reason. Humility says, let me put aside what I want from life and let me ask what life wants from me. And if there's a really strong ego within you, you hear that question, what does life want from me? And you know what we hear? Wonk, wonk, wonk. Because the ego says, yeah, what does life want from me? But only if it's what I want. Back to bargaining, back to negotiating, back to hell we go. See what I'm saying? So the way we are going to energetically influence this world of evolving spiritual beings to make their way through these cycles of grief out of judgment into the light of gratitude, where the acceleration that takes you through that as efficiently as possible is your ability to love, breathe, and bless. And for those of us in which gratitude is already arising, and the stage of our journey is anchoring the light for all those beings who are making their way through these very tumultuous times and stages. We are not only leading this awakening planet into a new paradigm of humanity, we are not just a part of the love revolution. We are cleverly disguised commandos of the gratitude army, in which we are here to hold a space for what the world has to play out while we Care Bear stare the crap out of this unraveling world. In the gratitude army, who are we against? No one. What are we for? Equality.
And just to be clear, we're not commando. We're not
You don't have to go commando.
Winnie the Pooh with no pants kind of commando.
And if that helps you be more aligned with your blessings and breath, that's up to you. And when you are holding the light and you are shining a light of gratitude naturally to where you are bringing out of the energy of people the unprocessed pain that they haven't dealt with, and it seems like they're projecting it onto you as commandos of the gratitude army, do you know what we say to those beings? Thank you. Thank you. Not the most effective defense tactic at a time of war, but we are not in war, we are unraveling war.
Yeah.
All beings who are displacing their passion as anger and lashing out are starving spiritual masters and repressed artists who don't know how to express their passion artistically. So this is not the art of war, this is the war of art. And we are the gratitude army that is here to say thank you to whatever we see, to shine our bright, brilliant, heart-centered light into the world. And no matter what candidate is put into what Oval Office or White House, we become smarter than any instinct to be angry towards any elected character. And we say, if that's the character who's been voted into office, let us aim our highest consciousness in their direction and let our light transform that character into the highest vibration of change this world has ever known. Barack Obama was the hope we were waiting for. We sat back and nothing happened. So we have now Donald Trump. Now we are going to use that character. We're going to aim our light into that field, and we're going to allow that field of consciousness for as long as it's on our television screen to be where we aim our light so that the highest possibility can manifest. Not because of Donald Trump, but because that's the manifestation that we are going to transform as co-creators of reality. And if Hillary was elected, I'd be saying the same thing. Doesn't matter who's elected. That's just people saying, here's the person we're going to look at often on television. Or perhaps it was the world saying, yes, Alec Baldwin, we'd like to see you every week on Saturday Night Live. That's just the manifestation. So anytime you see him on television, when you are angry at the character, two things are happening. You're angry because what he represents in his own actions is what you can perceive and what you can judge by sitting back and not participating as a member of the Gratitude Army. And if you can't participate in allowing your light to shine towards him to help him transform this world for whatever time he has been given to play that role, that just means you have more work to do throughout the stages of the grief cycle. And that's okay. Because like I said, what accelerates us through this? Love, breath, and blessings. So if you can't join this movement to bless the actions of a character like Donald Trump, that means you stop and bless yourself. I bless that the anger within me that is unable to bless him is only here to be blessed and loved and adored and accepted as a way of making my way through this grief cycle as I purge the old and welcome the new. That's like saying, instead of making my fight against this character, I allow the part of me that only knows how to live and feel bad, I allow that part to die so that something new can shine through. Do you know why we fight with characters? We fight against other people because we're all afraid to die. And only when you're willing to die do you know what it is to live. And when you say, I can't bless this thing, so I'm going to bless the one that can't bless another, then you say hello to death. And when you say hello to death, only more life is given. It's where you surrender your fight. Someone's asked me once, how do I surrender? Be willing to die. And it shocked them. And I don't mean be willing to die physically. Be willing to die psychologically, emotionally. Let your fight die. And then there can be space for the gratitude and acceptance that you cannot work hard enough to manufacture. But for those of us that are already in the gratitude and acceptance, we see any character on the screen, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, whoever you see, and any person in front of you in the world, and you bless everyone in front of you with the highest qualities of their divinity so that they can pass that light around into their families, to their children, and their communities so this heaven realm can wake back up. And if you're unable to participate in that, that's okay. That just means your heart needs to be blessed, your heart needs to be loved, and if you can't even bless and love yourself because there's just too much skepticism, judgment, and sarcasm, then we simply take time to breathe. And at the very least, if you can take time to breathe instead of fight, breathe instead of judge, breathe instead of accuse, you are becoming one less person in the world that is feeding the darkness that our light is resolving. And even that is a contribution towards the whole. Let your fight die, or you will dare to die fighting. And that, my friends, is the worst case scenario. To have the chance to let your fight die and instead to insist on dying to your fight. And you know why we have all incarnated into this magnificent ascension timeline? Because we have all died to our fight 1,000,000 times over, and we came here to do it right. To let our fight die, not die to someone else's fight, not to die to the fight we have with someone else's fight. And to say, no matter how scared, inferior, insecure, lonely, and vulnerable it makes me, I will let my fight die. I will breathe instead of fight. I will bless instead of fight. I will love instead of fight. And if I need to keep fighting and can't seem to do that naturally, I am who I bless, I am who I love. And if I can't do that, I just breathe, because you can't breathe and fight at the same time. Those who fight are not aware of their breath, and those who are aware of their breath aren't fighting. And when you're a commando in the gratitude army, breath is our primary tactic. Where you can be in the presence of someone who is under hostile internal turmoil, and you see that person who's angry has in some time in their life had their power taken from them. And someone who is angry is breathing in a very erratic way, which means they're not getting a lot of breath because someone from their past took their breath away. And the minute in the presence of that, instead of matching that breath, you slow your breath. In the presence of the one who's had their breath taken away, you take your breath even deeper, as to say, if I'm in the presence of someone who's had their power taken, I take my power back on their behalf, and my slower breaths will give them back their power so that they can wake up in the midst of their tirade, accusation, and judgment and realize I am not their enemy. I am their liberator. People only fight you to say, you're the one that can help me be free. Now breathe opposite of me and help me take my power back. So in the presence of conflict, in the presence of a world, no matter how freaked out people get, no matter how many rallies seem to be, you watch it in your neighborhood, you watch it on TV, what do? We breathe. We breathe the way the world isn't breathing. And you know how the world isn't breathing? Aware of its breath. You can't be focused on your fight and aware of your breath at the same time, because the minute you're aware of your breath, your fight is done. So whatever you're watching, you don't have to be relaxed to breathe like that. You don't have to be grateful to breathe like that. What if I were to make it radical and say, however you're feeling, don't even work with that. Just breathe, no matter what you're feeling. You're angry? Breathe angrily. Nothing more transformative than choosing to breathe vengefully than to live vengefully. You have sadness inside of you, breathe sadly. There's confusion, breathe confusingly. Even if there's still judgments of the old paradigm, breathe judgmentally. As if to say, yes, there's judgment still here if it's there, but it will not prevent me from being one with my breath. Because when you focus on your breath, all of those lingering patterns are given permission to be released, and you make your way through these stages and out of the darkness into the light where gratitude and acceptance can dawn naturally. The one thing is for certain about this world is that if you're going to sit back and just watch things and wait for characters to do things that you're waiting for them to do, you are taking away or taking out of the equation your role in this interactive play. To sit back and say, let's see what these characters of this administration does, and let me sit back and decide if I like it, is to take out of the equation the power your consciousness has to direct the administration with the intentions and energies you set forth. So what are the odds that you're going to be totally appalled or you're going to be devastated or disappointed by what people do when you sit back and fail to participate? And again, take whatever action you need to take in the world. Take whatever external action you're motivated to take. I'm talking about taking vibrational action. That far before you can assemble people in a public space and disrupt businesses with a protest, we can focus on our breath. We can surrender our internal will to fight. And instead of dying to the fight, we let the fight die. So that each and every one of us, in being one with our breath, aligns with our highest qualities and characteristics. And then when we come together, we can pull from our divine resources and then create something worthwhile and powerful. But this all works from the inside out. And in my previous video, which a lot of you have seen, Anchoring the Divine Feminine, I wasn't talking about the possibility of Donald Trump becoming president because I wanted to see that happen, nor did I not want to see that happen. I said all that as a foreshadowing of, by the way, my intuition is telling me something very specific, and I'm just going to start to plant the seeds as to, if that happens, what that timeline means. The world has, in some way, or depending on how you perceive reality, someone decided that it would be a fantastic idea for this person to be the president of the country. All that is someone to focus on. The question is, what are you going to do with that point of focus? Are you going to make that person an excuse for denial, the reason for your isolation, the next target of your anger, the excuse for your sadness, the reason you're confused, the thing you're bargaining with the universe about? Are you going to say, I can't be happy and free while that thing's in front of me? Or are you going to take your power back from external reality and say, that might be the character and consciousness, but it is my light that casts a vote every single day to suggest how I wish for that character to be expressed. This is about you taking your power back. This is about the world becoming a renaissance of spiritual evolution, and it is taking place at record speed because you, the light of divinity, is here to bring it forth. We are all sitting around wondering who's going to make this better, and the ones who wonder who's going to make it better are the ones who came to make it better. That's why I'm here serving you, because I know your role, and I'm here to ensure the victory that is already guaranteed. It's not things are going to get better when this happens, when that happens. Things are going to get better when every day, whether a little or a lot, we do something to focus our breath and our awareness in a direction that supports the evolution of this world. And even at the very least, if you make the decision to breathe instead of fight, or to not fight with the things that fight you, or to allow the things that fight you to remind you of the perfect moment in time when you can stop and breathe. Wouldn't that be revolutionary? Every time something fights with me, it's a reminder to stop and breathe for a few minutes. Whenever someone fights with me, whenever they overlook my light, whenever someone ignores me, that's just life saying, stop and breathe. It's time to ground your energy. Now, just to make this more personal to your journey, try these words out loud. In the name of escorting you out of the hell of judgment and into the heaven of gratitude, just try these words out loud. I accept, no matter how inconvenient, frustrating, or infuriating, life tends to be. It is only the light of my consciousness. Guiding me out of a stage of grief. Where I am mourning the loss of the old paradigm. And opening up to a brand new frontier. This means I'm not angry with the things that anger me. I'm just purging anger to move through the cycle of grief. I'm not saddened by the things that sadden me. I'm simply saddened. To release the pain. Sorrow. Guilt and shame. That moves me through the grief cycle. I'm not confused by the things that confuse me.
I'm not confused by the things that confuse me.
I'm simply confused.
I'm simply confused.
Because moments of confusion unravel my defense mechanism as my innocence is initiated into the light of divinity. As if every moment is an initiation of consciousness that doesn't always have to feel peaceful, sparkly, and light in order to be beneficial. Nor does it always have to be painful. Crushing and exhausting in order for me to know I'm being productive in my journey. So in honor of being aware of what's really going on, and in making the commitment to evolve in such a rate and speed that I inspire others around me to evolve at a quicker rate and speed, so that life doesn't have to manifest wacky characters just to pull out of us what we can surrender right now. Therefore, in the name of my highest evolution, I allow all unresolved patterns and cellular memories, identifications and attachments, to denial, isolation, confusion, anger, sadness, skepticism, grief, guilt, shame, inferiority, self-judgment, skepticism, bargaining and negotiating, all self-defeating patterns, all illnesses and imbalances, all addictions, throughout all dimensions, time and space, including all moments of victimhood, all karmas and traumas, throughout all ancestral lineages that have been encoded and recorded, throughout all atoms, cells, and molecules, throughout the physical realm, the mental realm, the emotional realm, the causal realm, the astral realm, the cellular realm, the atomic realm, the subatomic realm, the elemental realm, the celestial realm, the cosmic realm, throughout all individuals, throughout the collective, throughout all incarnations, throughout all cycles of birth and death, throughout all universes, galaxies and civilizations, continents, body, mind, heart, and souls, is cleared out of this energy field and all energy fields, and return to the light now. And as of this moment, I reclaim my full and absolute power. Recognizing the light of gratitude and acceptance. Love, peace, harmony. Unity, oneness. Of my highest consciousness. Of my highest divinity. Of my highest victory. Of my highest liberation. Of my highest potential. As my natural state. Who I've always been. what I shall always be, that only incarnated to venture through the darkness, because of my interconnection to all beings, allowing my awakening and returning to power, to return others to their power, therefore to fulfill my mission of reclaiming my power, to inspire the world to awaken, and to allow the world to manifest light in physical form, instead of more wackiness, to heal all the distractions. I bring forth, I command into form, and I hereby anchor my highest light, my highest truth, my highest way, my highest health, my highest autonomy, my highest invincibility, my highest immortality,
my highest sovereignty,
my highest liberation, my highest abundance, my highest passion, my highest ecstasy, my highest bliss, my highest potential, that is fully realized, fully revealed, and fully received, for the well-being of all, that I am now, and so it is. I am the light I am. Oh, hell yeah, you are. Take a moment and feel that. Wacky characters on your TV screen only have power when you are being silenced and not using your voice and breath to say things like that. And if we don't have the audacity to say things like that out loud, you have a YouTube video to walk you through it, like repeat after me. And even if it's just starting to fester inside your mind as the most audacious, brilliant patterns of consciousness, you're in some public sector and someone is having a bad day, right? Going to work, not seeing work as a manifestation of carrying them through the grief cycle at record speed, which, by the way, is not something if you tell someone's going to make a difference. Oh my God, you're having a bad day. Here's the thing. Your job is a manifestation of consciousness. And it's only so terrible so it can move you through the grief cycle at record speed. Isn't that great? That's not going to necessarily be the kind of conversation you're going to want to have with someone who's willing to fight. Because someone who's willing to fight says, I'll fight with you. Exactly. That's thank you. Right? In baby language, that was, yes, hallelujah. When you're with someone who is afraid of their own consciousness, they'll fight with anyone. You can be about love and someone could fight you. I've experienced that firsthand. It's amazing. So instead, we don't need to explain this to anyone. We just need to be love, gratitude, acceptance in action. And someone have a heck of a time in their everyday life, let alone not seeing the deeper implications of their journey, and is not very nice to you. You know what you just say on the inside? Thank you, Lord. Thank you. That's what commandos of the Gratitude Army say. Thank you, Lord. Because when someone's not nice to you, and I'm not saying put yourself in relationships of toxic proportions. I'm not saying that. I always make this distinction in nearly every video, because I have seen old paradigm teachings be used as excuses to stay in really bad relationships where people are being treated verbally, mentally, emotionally, and physically terribly. And someone stays in the relationship to practice accepting what is. But I'm talking about under normal circumstances, when you're just going through your day shining your light, and someone doesn't see your bright, shiny light and it can agitate you. They don't see your light because they can't see their own light. And as a commando of the Gratitude Army, you transmute that energy they send your way with, thank you, Lord, meaning you don't see my divinity, so I'm going to see yours. You're acting this energy out because you still have a fight in you. My fight has already died. There's only gratitude here. So I pass along gratitude and the recognition of your divinity, because obviously your behavior is showing me what you need in your journey. Thank you, Lord. No longer playing the game of, I'm not going to recognize someone's light until they act appropriately and recognize my light. Has that ever worked for you? That's why people spiritually get together and they hide in these secret communities, and then cults are created. We're over all that. You want to live in a conscious community? It's called Earth. This is a real intentional community. Everything's intentional. Someone honks their horn at you, they meant it. It might be projected, I can't honk at my father, so you're the second best thing. And you know what we say? Rear view mirror, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, by overlooking my light to help me not be attached to any role or definition. Thank you for freeing me of attachments to my identity. Thank you for freeing me of my reference points. Thank you for not treating me the way I dare to treat others, so that I can discover that I'm only nourished by the well-being of my responses. Thank you, Lord, for that fiercely grace lesson, that you are only fed by the things you give to others. And you give to others because it's a gift for them, but you give to others because that's the only way for you to be nourished. And thank you, Lord, for putting me in a world of people that either scare or disappoint me, so I can only be fed by the reality of my own light and generosity. Thank you, Lord. Yeah, woo. I'm telling you, to be a commando of the Gratitude Army, it's pretty badass. And you are already in that position. It's just you've learned to match the energy of the darkness that's being rehabilitated in others and standing in the light, that in past lifetimes, when you stood in that light, you were a sitting duck and a moving target, weren't you? We can all feel that. So let's have another moment of clearing. Let's have a come to Jesus clearing right now. Or come to Muhammad, or whatever. Come to whatever you wish. In the name of our highest healing, try this out loud. I accept.
I accept.
That in past lifetimes. Whether I remember it or not. There were moments. When embodying the light of divinity. I became a sitting duck or a moving target. For the persecution. For the torture. For the pain. for the unresolved torment
for the unresolved torment
and judgment
and judgment
and persecution
and persecution
imposed onto me
imposed onto me.
By the darkness my light was unraveling
By the darkness my light was unraveling.
during a point in history
During a point in history
where that darkness was not prepared
where that darkness was not prepared
to be taken out of power.
to be taken out of power.
And that left me with the residue or imprint
And that left me with the residue or imprint
that I must shut down my divinity,
that I must shut down my divinity,
shut down my light,
shut down my light,
cut off my intuitive abilities.
cut off my intuitive abilities,
Because to be different than others
because to be different than others
makes me a target for their unprocessed pain,
makes me a target for their unprocessed pain,
confuses them
confuses them
by being something they're not,
by being something they're not,
and makes me a victim of their abuse.
and makes me a victim of their abuse.
But in honor of healing that abuse,
But in honor of healing that abuse,
I allow all cycles of abuse,
I allow all cycles of abuse,
persecution, torture,
persecution and torture,
murder, and rape
murder and rape,
from representing the light
from representing the light
that triggered and intimidated the darkness
that triggered and intimidated the darkness
throughout my family of origin,
throughout my family of origin,
throughout all ancestral lineages,
throughout all ancestral lineages,
throughout all chapters of history
throughout all chapters of history
that are cleared out of this energy field,
that are cleared out of this energy field,
including all decisions
including all decisions
to separate from source,
to separate from
to
source,
shut down my light,
to shut down my light,
and turn off my intuitive abilities.
and turn off my intuitive abilities.
It's cleared out of this energy field,
Cleared out of this energy field,
cleared out of all energy fields,
cleared out of all energy fields,
and returned to the light now.
and return to the light now.
And as of this moment,
And as of this moment,
I reawaken my light.
I reawaken my light.
I reactivate my consciousness.
I reactivate my consciousness.
I remember my divinity.
I remember my divinity.
I restore my connection to the light.
I restore my connection to the light.
And I bring back to awareness
And I bring back to awareness
all my gifts, powers, and abilities
all my gifts, powers, and abilities
that were never misused,
that were never misused,
no matter how often I was falsely accused in the past.
no matter how often I was falsely accused in the past.
Where in this moment,
Where in this moment,
with no fear
with no fear
of retribution from the darkness,
of retribution from the darkness,
simply because we exist in a period of time
simply because we exist in a period of time
where darkness is being rehabilitated
where darkness is being rehabilitated,
instead of given more space
instead of given more space
to lash out and shut down.
to lash out and shut down.
I embody the light of my highest divinity.
I embody the light of my highest divinity.
I embody the light of my highest intuitive gifts, powers, and abilities.
I embody the light of my highest gifts and abilities.
Good enough. Good enough. Law of intention, universe goes, we know what you meant. I embody the light of my highest uniqueness.
I embody the light of my highest uniqueness.
I embrace the diversity within me.
I embrace the diversity within me.
Whether how I look,
Whether I look,
whether what I desire,
whether what I desire,
or what I choose to stand for,
or whether I choose to stand for,
no matter how different that seems
no matter how different that seems
from the interests of others.
from the interests of others.
I bring to light my highest divinity,
I bring to light my highest divinity,
my highest consciousness,
my highest consciousness,
my highest abilities,
my highest abilities,
my highest grace,
my highest grace,
to shine the light of consciousness
to shine the light of consciousness
that liberates darkness from itself.
that liberates darkness from itself.
As I take the time
As I take the time
to redirect the course of history
to redirect the course of history
and usher in the golden age of unity consciousness
and usher in the golden age of unity consciousness
by surrendering my fight
by surrendering my fight
and reclaiming my power now.
and reclaiming my power now.
And so I am free.
And and so I'm free.
And what do you feel? It's like time stops on a dime. Do you want to know why? Time is like the rotating of an earth, where it's like when consciousness is dormant, life's play is playing you. But the minute you start to speak the words, as the holy creator you are, the play of time stops. And instead of it playing you, you come out of hiding, and now it's time for you to play. So welcome home. And the more often we allow this part of ourselves to come out through our thoughts, our inspirations, our actions, our words, our actions, our creations, and not waiting for something big, just little choices at a time. Life purpose is not about waiting for that big thing you're supposed to do that makes you popular. Life purpose is the little positive, empowering changes you make throughout a day that increase the likelihood that tomorrow you're going to make even more empowered changes, and the tipping point in you as one being starts to occur. And as the tipping point in one occurs, that tipping point influences the tipping point of others. So life purpose is about every day I am making choices to make the greatest use of my time. It's not a race against the clock. It's about making the most of where you stand and taking the time to remember what you stand for. And the highest vibration you could stand for doesn't need you to fight for it, simply because you will unleash it on an entire planet when you surrender the will to fight. We don't fight for love. We unleash love onto a planet by surrendering the will to fight. And what will do that on your behalf is the power of your breath that you direct into the beauty of your divine heart space by returning to the glory and magnificence of love. And in honor of creating the tipping point in every heart and uniting all beings as one, and unraveling the need for life to manifest ridiculousness so that we can start bringing forth the highest creations of consciousness and form and turn this planet into the most exquisite renaissance of spiritual expansion any planet has ever known. We say to all beings who dwell as the cells in our body that are transformed through your highest, most noble intention, whether masquerading as a you who's lost, or whether just a spiritual master in human form that is simply directing blessings to an entire universe within you, we say to this heart, I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
As if each I love you was saying to the entire universe, you can fight whoever you want, I don't fight with you. I love you is the declaration that your fight is done so that you can bring forth the light to end every war in every heart. I love you.
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 And if you have the experience of going, I'm not really feeling this, it's not you not feeling this, it's the world not feeling this. The world is so frozen in apathy from denial and isolation that it's not even in tune with the heart to receive the very love, that our love chisels away at all those layer of defenses so it can let in the blessings that are being sent out. I love you.
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 And if there's a part that says, that's kind of embarrassing, it's stupid to do I love you, I know I love you is what melts us into vulnerability. And oftentimes, as the ego goes from darkness into light, embarrassment is the transitionary state. When one goes from dark to light, often that shift into humility, out of denial, is called embarrassment. When someone's embarrassed, their ego mask pops off for a second. And they go, I don't know how to be this soul. And we say to them, it's okay, honey, I love you.
I love you.
You can come out of hiding, I love you.
I love you.
Embarrassment is the first moment of surrender. I love you.
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 And if you think to yourself, my goodness, it's kind of exhausting to love this much. It's only exhausting to love when other parts of your life are occupied with fighting. So if you don't want love to feel exhausting, stop fighting. I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
And even if you don't know how to stop fighting, I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
You can fight me, I won't fight you. I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
For the well-being of all, I love you.
I love you.
For the liberation of all, I love you.
I love you.
For the ascension of earth, I love you.
I love you.
For the healing of every heart, I love you.
I love you.
For the well-being of all, I love you.
I love you.
For the awakening of all, I love you.
I love you.
For the transformation of all, I love you.
I love you.
For the sovereignty of all, I love you.
I love you.
I love you.